Hey y'all, if there is one thing I cannot stand, it is tossing and turning at night because I'm hot and I'm uncomfortable. But all that ended when I was introduced to Cozy Earth. Crafted from 100% bamboo, these sheets are not only incredibly soft, but also they're breathable, they're moisture wicking, and they keep me cool and comfortable all night long. I literally sink into the bed and feel like I am sleeping on a cloud. They have everything from sheet sets to complete bedding bundles to comforters, everything you're going to need to get a night's sleep. And the brand has been featured on Good Morning America, In Style, Better Homes and Gardens. And guess what? They don't stop with bedding either. They got pajamas for both men and women. And I am telling you, they are the most comfortable pajama sets I have ever worn. They have bath towels, robes, tops, hoodies. If you wear it, sleep on it, or dry off with it, they got it. With free shipping on orders over $50, a 100-night sleep trial, and a 10-year warranty, Cozy Earth will bring you what it brought me: a good night's sleep and a whole lot of comfort. Exposed Podcast has partnered with Cozy Earth to offer my listeners 41% off by using the code EXPOSED at checkout. That's 41% off by going to CozyEarth.com and using the code EXPOSED at checkout. Sleep better, live better, choose Cozy Earth. Sweet dreams await.
When your team's curious and ready to grow, they do their best work, and that changes everything. At CBT Nuggets, we've spent over 25 years making IT training engaging, hands-on, and fun. Expert-led courses, virtual labs, real-world skills your team can use right now. From networking to cloud to cybersecurity, we build skills and confidence that drive results. Believe in your team. Give them the tools to thrive at cbtnuggets.com/solutions.
This is the story of the one. As a custodial supervisor at a high school, he knows that during cold and flu season, germs spread fast. It's why he partners with Grainger to stay fully stocked on the products and supplies he needs, from tissues to disinfectants to floor scrubbers. All so that he can help students, staff, and teachers stay healthy and focused. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Exposed, Scandalous Files of the Elite. I'm your host, Jim Chapman, and I don't have a series titled Bad Mayors, but if I did, the subject I am covering today would for sure be an episode. Now, today I'm going to cover the indictment of New Orleans Mayor Latoya Cantrell. This came out on August 15th. And she was indicted by the federal government, which, as I've told you so many times in the past, especially with the Diddy trial, the feds have a 95% conviction rate. If you're indicted by the feds, you are likely to get convicted of something. Now, Diddy escaped the most major of charges in his indictment, but he did get convicted of a couple things. And speaking of that, his sentencing coming up in early October, I think he's going to get the max. That's my thoughts on that. But we're going to bring you back to the subject of today. That's Latoya Cantrell. And for those of you that are unfamiliar, she is the mayor of New Orleans, longtime mayor of New Orleans. And it ain't looking good for her. I have a pretty interesting connection to that case, which when we get to that point, I'll tell you a little bit about that as well. But for now, let's get into what is alleged by the United States government against New Orleans Mayor Latoya Cantrell. And it's important to note that the co-defendant in this case is a guy by the name of Jeffrey Vappie. Now, he was Cantrell's bodyguard. And keep in mind, this is a criminal indictment, not a civil case. And it reads as follows. As mayor, Latoya Cantrell received physical protection from the NOP, NOPD, the New Orleans Police Department's Executive Protection Unit. The co-defendant, Jeffrey Paul Vappie II, served as a member of that Executive Protection Unit and was assigned to provide protection for Cantrell from on or about May 23rd of 2021 to November 9th of 2022. Then again, from June 22nd of 2023 to April 22nd of 2024. In or around October of 2021, Cantrell and Vappie developed a personal and intimate relationship. To hide their relationship from detection and to maximize their time together, Cantrell and Vappie exploited their public positions to develop and implement a scheme to defraud the city of New Orleans and the NOPD by engaging in personal activities while Vappie claimed to be on duty and was paid for providing protection for Cantrell. As part of their scheme, Cantrell and Vappie arranged for Vappie to accompany Cantrell when she traveled outside of the state of Louisiana on official business. Cantrell falsely claimed she needed protection from members of the Executive Protection Unit while traveling due to safety concerns. Cantrell and Vappie orchestrated out-of-state trips to maximize their opportunities and engage in personal activities. In total, Vappie's trips with Cantrell cost the city of New Orleans over $70,000 separate from Cantrell's own travel costs. Aware of their conduct and knowing that it violated rules, policies, and procedures, Cantrell and Vappie attempted to distract and impede inquiries and investigations, including a federal grand jury investigation about the true nature and circumstances of their relationship and their scheme to defraud. They did this by using an encrypted messaging platform, intimidating and punishing subordinates, lying to colleagues and advisors, making false public statements, harassing a private individual, and that's the connection that I have to all of this that I'll get into later, who took pictures of them in public together, deleting electronic evidence, making false statements to federal law enforcement agents, authoring an affidavit signed under oath and penalty of perjury that contained false information, and testifying falsely while under oath before a grand jury. Then it goes into what the Executive Protection Unit is. The NOPD was an agency of the city of New Orleans, a local government municipality within the state of Louisiana, located in the Eastern District of Louisiana. NOPD was the primary local law enforcement agency for the city of New Orleans and divided its operations geographically into 8 districts. NOPD fell under the authority of the superintendent. The superintendent served at the pleasure of the mayor of the city of New Orleans, Latoya Cantrell. The Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office was a law enforcement entity in the city of New Orleans as well, and the city of New Orleans employed an executive protection unit for the purpose of providing security and risk mitigation for select high-ranking city of New Orleans personnel. Approximately 4 members of the executive protection unit, each of whom was a law enforcement officer employed by NOPD or Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office, provided protection for the mayor, and they were split into 2 teams, Team A and Team B, and each of those teams had 2 members each. The 2 Executive Protection Unit teams were organized to provide protection for the mayor on a preset rotating schedule. So it tells you a little bit about what they did. And it goes on to say Executive Protection Unit did not typically provide protection to the residents of the mayor when the mayor was elsewhere. In the course of their duties, Executive Protection Unit members rarely entered the mayor's residence. On such occasion, the EPU members only spent a brief period inside of the mayor's residence. Even when extenuating circumstances arose, EPU remained outside the mayor's residence when providing protection. Now, why are they hammering down on that? I'll bet you as we go along, Vappie was in a residence a lot. EPU members were paid bi-weekly by the city of New Orleans at regular and overtime hourly rates. EPU employed by NOPD submitted their individual time work to a sergeant on a regular basis. NOPD relied on the contents of certified time cards to determine the amount it paid EPU members. When an EPU member traveled on official business, he was eligible to receive a daily allowance for meals and incidentals. After returning from a trip, the EPU member completed a travel expense form and submitted it to the mayor for review and approval. After the mayor approved a travel expense form, the city of New Orleans issued the payment to the EPU member. So in this case,
this is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
You've already figured out she's accused of doing some pretty illicit things with her bodyguard, who was an employee of the NOPD. And she was the one that approved basically his timesheet and his expense sheet. So think about that. To tell you a little bit about the bodyguard, defendant Jeffrey Vappie II was an adult resident of New Orleans. He was employed as an officer with NOPD from April of 1997 to June of 2024. So a good long run there, almost 30 years. In or around August of 2023, Vappie was promoted to the rank of senior police officer. Vappie maintained financial accounts at JP Morgan, bearing, and it lists the account numbers. Vappie received payments from his work with NOPD via direct deposit. He was assigned to serve as a member of EPU from May 23rd, 2021 to November of 2022. He then was injured, unable to work, and placed on sick leave. Then he was reassigned from June of 2023 to April of 2024 to that unit once again. And he attended trainings concerning best practices, techniques, and ethics for providing protection, security, and risk mitigation. Now let's talk about those of you that may not be familiar with Latoya Cantrell, the mayor of New Orleans. She was elected to serve a 4-year term for mayor on November of 2017. On November of 2021, she was reelected to a second and final 4-year term as mayor of the city of New Orleans. And during her tenure as mayor, Cantrell received city pay protection from EPU. Typically, on the preceding afternoon or evening, a member of Cantrell's staff would circulate a document via email that contained Cantrell's schedule and the members of the EPU that would be on duty for Cantrell the next day. The email recipients included Cantrell, the members of the EPU, and various members of Cantrell's staff. On or about March 22nd of 2022, Cantrell appointed Vappie to serve as a member of the Housing Authority of New Orleans Board of Commissioners. Some people are looking at that as a favor that she made for Vappie because of their relationship. Personal correspondence between Cantrell and Vappie. WhatsApp was a free end-to-end encrypted cellular phone service that allowed users to send text, voice message, and video messages, make voice and video calls, share images, documents, user locations, and other content. WhatsApp was known for its security features. It's an app that supposedly you can't get into. You're going to find out that there's no encryption app out there that people can't get into. You're going to discover that. But we'll move on. In or around February of 2022, Vappie and Cantrell began using WhatsApp as their primary means of exchanging messages. Well, okay. I mean, she is a mayor. He is her bodyguard. Maybe they're communicating and they don't want someone outside of, people with good intentions to be able to get into their messaging system. Not quite. Between in or around February 2022 and October of 2022, Vappie and Cantrell exchanged over 15,000 messages via WhatsApp. That's a lot more than "Are you working tomorrow?" right? Then it gets into the travel of Mayor Latoya Cantrell. Approximately 5 months after Vappie joined EPU and started providing security protection for Cantrell, Cantrell began arranging for a member of the EPU to accompany her on out-of-state trips that required domestic or international air travel. In or around 2021, Vappie accompanied Cantrell to Scotland. Vappie would later reminisce in a WhatsApp message to Cantrell about that Scotland trip, and that was, quote, where it all started. How about that? In an interview with a local television station recording on or about September 13th, 2022, Cantrell justified having an EPU team member accompany her on trips outside of the state of Louisiana as being, quote, due to COVID and absolutely tied to my health and well-being, she said. In separate statements, Cantrell explained that her travel accommodations were a matter of safety, not luxury, and that as all women know, our health and safety are often disregarded and we are left to navigate alone. And right there is about the best example you could ever come up with for gaslighting. Notwithstanding her justification for needing EPU members to accompany her, Cantrell continued to travel outside of the state of Louisiana without EPU. For example, in or around June of 2022, Cantrell traveled to an event in New York without EPU because Vappie was supposed to go but could not due to an injury. On or about September 13th of 2022, Cantrell canceled a work trip to Miami, Florida, where she was scheduled to attend a fall leadership meeting of the United States Conference of Mayors. Instead, at approximately the same time that she canceled the Miami trip, Cantrell booked a personal trip in which she traveled alone from New Orleans to Martha's Vineyard via commercial airplane, commercial bus, and public ferry to spend time with Vappie while he attended a conference paid for by the city of New Orleans related to his position on that board of commissioners that I told you she appointed him to. In or around September of 2021 and March of 2024, while perpetrating to serve on duty as a member of EPU, Vappie accompanied Cantrell on at least 14 trips outside of the state of Louisiana, including to domestic destinations such as LA, Orlando, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C., as well as international destinations such as Scotland and the United Arab Emirates. Unbelievable. You know how expensive the United Arab Emirates is? Wow. The city of New Orleans incurred more than $70,000 in cost related to Vappie's purported work-related trips outside of the state of Louisiana with Cantrell, including meals, lodging, incidentals, salary, and travel. For example, in April of 2022, Vappie and Cantrell traveled from New Orleans to San Francisco for the stated purpose of Cantrell attending an environmental law conference that began on April 6th of 2022 and ended on April 8th. As a result of that April 2022 trip to San Francisco, the city of New Orleans incurred expenses for Vappie and Cantrell of over $9,000, including paying Vappie approximately $1,600 in salary and overtime. On or about August 21st of 2022, Vappie and Cantrell traveled from New Orleans to Washington, D.C. for the stated purpose of Cantrell meeting for 1 hour with a representative of the U.S. Department of Justice. As a result of that trip, the city of New Orleans incurred expenses for Vappie and Cantrell of over $3,000, including paying Vappie approximately $1,118 in salary and overtime. On or about September 28th of 2022, Vappie and Cantrell traveled from New Orleans to Atlanta, Georgia for the stated purpose of Cantrell attending a one-day conference. On or about September of 2022, Vappie and Cantrell traveled from Atlanta to LA for the stated purpose of Cantrell attending a Global Green Community Lower Ninth Ward sponsor launch event. Cantrell paid approximately $762 to upgrade Vappie's seat to first class on the return flight to New Orleans on or about September 30th, 2022, using her personal American Express card. As a result of that trip, the city of New Orleans incurred expenses for Vappie and Cantrell of over $5,000, including paying Vappie approximately $1,400 in salary. Then they get into an apartment situation called the Pontalba Apartments. The city of New Orleans owned the apartment, Unit 530B, in the Pontalba building in the French Quarter of New Orleans. until in or around March of 2024, the mayor had access to that apartment. Not later than about mid-2022, EPU members treated the Pontalba apartment in a manner similar to Cantrell's personal residence, including not providing protection for Cantrell while she was inside that apartment. During shifts, Vappie claimed to be on duty for EPU. He frequently spent time inside that apartment, both with Cantrell and alone. On or about November of 2022, local New Orleans media outlets first published and broadcast reports regarding Vappie and his frequent and lengthy presence inside the apartment, alone with Cantrell. Vappie was removed from the EPU and reassigned to another position within NOPD from on or around November of 2022 until June of 2023. On November of 2022, Vappie conducted numerous online searches for attorneys who specialize in the practice of criminal defense in the greater New Orleans area, including using the names of several attorneys and, quote, female defense attorney near me. On multiple occasions, including January of 2023, Cantrell made public statements in which she denied having a romantic relationship or physical one with Vappie. On June of 2023, the interim superintendent of NOPD formally sustained the findings of an internal investigation that concluded Vappie committed misconduct as a member of the EPU. Shortly before doing so, the superintendent notified Cantrell of the superintendent's intent to sustain the proposed finding. In or around late June of 2023, Cantrell directed the interim superintendent to reassign Vappie back to the EPU. Acting on Cantrell's direction, on June 22nd of 2023, the interim superintendent did so. Then on September 11th of 2023, Cantrell informed the superintendent during an in-person meeting that the superintendent would not become the permanent superintendent of NOPD. Vappie attended that meeting. On September 22nd, 2023, the interim superintendent's tenure ended. Beginning on or about April 15th of 2024, local New Orleans media outlets published and broadcast reports of Vappie and Cantrell dining and consuming alcohol together during times Vappie claimed to be on duty. These reports included photographs of Vappie and Cantrell engaged in personal activities in public that were taken by a New Orleans resident. And I'm going to stop it right there just for a second, and then we'll get back to it. That's my connection. So I'll tell you a quick story. About a year ago, a lady from New Orleans contacted me. I'm not going to say her name. I don't know if she wants me to, so I'll keep it out of here. But she contacted me and she said she wanted to start a podcast, that she was a kind of a public figure in New Orleans, very well-versed on New Orleans, lived in a very ritzy apartment community in New Orleans. Apparent that this lady was wealthy or had some wealth to her, definitely hung out with some players in New Orleans and still does, according to what I see on Facebook of her. But she wanted to start a podcast and somebody referred her to me. So I said, well, tell me what your podcast is going to be about. And she said, well, I'd like to start a podcast that centers around New Orleans and all of the wonderful things. It's a wonderful city in a lot of ways, very historic. She wanted to feature the French Quarter in it, something that sounded like a pretty good podcast to do. And she says, I also have another connection. I said, what's that? And she said, I'm being sued. And I'm also suing the mayor of New Orleans, Latoya Cantrell. And I said, for what? And she said, well, I had taken some pictures of her while she was eating with her bodyguard on like a courtyard of that apartment complex that I've already mentioned in here. And she said, I posted these pictures. She's not a fan of the mayor's, to put it plain and simple, and wasn't a fan before this, but she had put these pictures on there because she knew Vappie and Cantrell sure seemed pretty close while they were eating or drinking or whatever they were doing on that balcony. Cantrell found out about it, and we'll get into some of the harassment that she allegedly did. But long story short, I told this lady I would have loved to have done it. The problem was the time for me. I was doing another podcast at this time called Real Life Real Crime Daily. And we were recording that 4 days per week. We were recording it 2 days per week, but it was posting 4 days per week. And my company, Envision Production, was producing it. So all the editing, all of that stuff was in my lap pretty much. I just didn't have time to take on anything else at that particular point in time. But interesting that here I was a year later and I was reviewing this lawsuit and look what popped up. Funny how life works, but we'll move on. On or about April 22nd of 2024, Vappie was again removed from the EPU and reassigned to another position within the NOPD. On or about May 9th of 2024, Cantrell filed a police report that included non-public information and characterized the behavior of the New Orleans resident who took pictures, the lady I was speaking with, of Vappie and Cantrell together as menacing to the point that Cantrell was concerned for her safety. On or about May 10th of 2024, Cantrell filed a petition for protection from stalking or sexual assault concerning the New Orleans resident who took pictures of Cantrell and Vappie, claiming that the resident had harassed Cantrell and was risking Cantrell's safety. On or about June 29th of 2024, Vappie resigned from the NOPD. Then a federal grand jury started an investigation. It gets into that. On or about July 14th of 2023, special agents with the FBI interviewed Vappie at his residence in New Orleans, and Vappie made false statements to them. FBI agents also served Vappie with a subpoena by a federal grand jury sitting in the Eastern District of Louisiana, and that subpoena required the production of, among other things, correspondence with Cantrell, gifts Vappie gave to Cantrell, and pictures of gifts Vappie gave to Cantrell. On or about July 18th of 2023, a federal grand jury sitting in the Eastern District of Louisiana issued a subpoena to Cantrell requiring the production of, among other things, communications, including text and electronic messages between Cantrell and Vappie, and documents concerning gifts Vappie gave Cantrell. In response, Cantrell produced documents and a sworn affidavit containing false information. On or about May 31st, a federal grand jury issued a subpoena, and this is in 2024, to Cantrell requiring her appearance before a grand jury. On or about June 28th of 2024, Cantrell appeared before a federal grand jury sitting in the Eastern District of Louisiana, was placed under oath, and she testified falsely. Then it goes into the conspiracy, beginning at a time unknown, but not later than October of 2021, and continuing until June 29th of 2024, the Eastern District of Louisiana and elsewhere, the defendants, Jeffrey Paul Vappie and Latoya Cantrell, did knowingly and willfully combine, conspire, and agree to devise and intend to devise a scheme to defraud to obtain money and property from the city of New Orleans under fraudulent pretenses, representations, and promises. The purpose of the conspiracy included the following: to convert the personal use of the conspirators' money and property belonging to the city of New Orleans and NOPD to enrich the conspirators by obtaining and retaining money and property to which the conspirators were not entitled, and to conceal the nature and purpose of the scheme and to defraud. Manner and means of the conspiracy. The manner and means by which Jeffrey Paul Vappie and Latoya Cantrell sought to accomplish the object and purpose of the conspiracy include, among other things, beginning not later than October of 2021, Vappie and Cantrell carried on a personal and intimate relationship, which Vappie and Cantrell attempted to disguise by making Vappie's interactions with Cantrell appear to relate to Vappie's duties and responsibilities as a member of the Executive Protection Unit. Vappie submitted and caused others to submit on his behalf time cards to NOPD for periods he falsely claimed to have worked, when in fact he was engaged in personal activities unrelated to work. In or around February of 2022, Vappie and Cantrell began using WhatsApp as their primary means of exchanging messages. Cantrell told a trusted staff member she was moving to WhatsApp altogether and had deleted our history and put him back in my phone as Vappie, but business only. Vappie and Cantrell exchanged over 15,000 personal messages, pictures, and voice messages on WhatsApp to avoid detection and continue their relationship. Vappie and Cantrell deleted messages they exchanged. Vappie and Cantrell discussed what City of New Orleans employees could and could not be trusted, what the truth was about their personal, intimate relationship. When asked by fellow EPU members, Vappie denied his involvement in the intimate relationship with Cantrell. Vappie participated in housing authority meetings during his on-duty shifts with EPU. Vappie and Cantrell ate meals and consumed alcohol together at restaurants during periods Vappie claimed to be working as a member of the EPU. Vappie and Cantrell treated the Pontalba apartment as their personal shared residence, with Cantrell often referring to it as our apartment when messaging Vappie.
Jim, did you see what happened in Texas today?
Wait, before you tell me that, let me tell you what happened in New York.
It cannot be as crazy as the case I told you about yesterday in Louisiana.
You know what? We should do a podcast about it.
And with that, we did. Crime Wire Weekly covers the crime news headlines that have dominated the week.
We cover trending crimes from all over the country and even sprinkle in a few globally.
Crime Wire Weekly is available now wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Simply by searching Crime Wire Weekly or clicking the link in the description of this podcast. Vappie and Cantrell frequently coordinated spending time together inside that apartment during periods Vappie claimed to be on duty. Cantrell occasionally canceled scheduled work events to facilitate personal and intimate interactions with Vappie in that apartment. They used their public positions to coordinate work trips outside the Louisiana area. Vappie submitted and Cantrell signed and authorized his travel expense forms. Cantrell lied to members of news media about the reason she had an EPU member accompany her to out-of-state trips. Vappie attempted to persuade the interim superintendent to exonerate him by telling the superintendent that it was the superintendent's opportunity to, quote, make it right before the interim superintendent decided whether to censure Vappie. Cantrell convened a meeting which Vappie attended and told the superintendent that Cantrell would nominate the interim superintendent to serve as the permanent superintendent of NOPD. After the meeting, Vappie invited the superintendent to a daiquiri shop to discuss the superintendent's recent demotion and mitigate the superintendent's disappointment. Cantrell abused her public position to seek non-public information in support of and to obtain a temporary restraining order against a New Orleans resident, my connection, who photographed and shared images of Cantrell and Vappie dining and consuming alcohol together outside, while Vappie claimed to be working as an on-duty member of EPU in order to suppress and discourage inquiry into Cantrell's public behavior with Vappie. Vappie lied to federal agents who interviewed him about, among other things, his true nature of his relationship with Cantrell. Cantrell concealed and withheld documents responsive to a federal grand jury subpoena that would have revealed the true nature of her relationship with Vappie. Cantrell provided an affidavit containing false statements to the jury about whether she withheld responsive documents from production and the reason for her failure to produce materials in response to a subpoena. Cantrell lied to a grand jury about the completeness and accuracy of the records she produced in response to that subpoena. And it goes on and it says, other acts that further the conspiracy and furtherance of the conspiracy and to achieve the objects thereof, the defendants Jeffrey Paul Vappie II and Latoya Cantrell committed and caused to be committed the following overacts, among others, in the Eastern District of Louisiana and elsewhere. On or about February of 2022, Cantrell canceled an official meeting throughout the day to spend time with Vappie in the apartment while Vappie claimed to be on duty as a member of EPU. On or about February 27th of 2022, Vappie caused an NOPD sergeant to report that Vappie worked on duty as a member of EPU from 8 o'clock a.m. on February 25th of 2022 until 12 o'clock a.m. on February 26th of 2022, despite spending hours inside that apartment with Cantrell during that period. On or about March 3rd of 2022, Vappie conducted an online search for, quote, Nashville Mayor affair. And there's a reason for that as well. On or about March 7th of 2022, Cantrell and Vappie exchanged the following messages via WhatsApp. Cantrell, SF, San Francisco, is April 6th through 8th. It officially ends at 4 p.m. on the 8th. Do we return on the 8th and stay at the apartment or return on the 9th? And Vappie wrote back, absolutely. Cantrell responds, absolutely on what? Vappie responds, on going to the apartment after the trip. Then he puts another response, oh, I'm sorry, I got it now. Then he said, we stay and do the Napa Valley thing like you said. Cantrell put perfect and a thumbs up emoji, and Vappie responds with a thumbs up emoji. On or about March 22nd of 2022, Cantrell appointed Vappie to the HANO Board of Commissioners. That's a housing authority. After an EPU member sent a text message to the rest of the EPU on or about March 31st of 2022 stating that anyone on EPU having an affair with Cantrell should stop because of the detrimental consequences it could have on Cantrell and the EPU team. How about that? I mean, tell me you know I'm fucking the mayor without telling me you know I'm fucking the mayor. Anyone who out there who is having an affair with Mayor Cantrell needs to quit. And they emailed that as an email out to everyone. Cantrell and Vappie separately confronted the EPU member about the text message, and Vappie denied to the EPU member that he and Cantrell were engaged in an intimate relationship. On or about April 4th of 2022, Cantrell told an associate, quote, please don't accuse me, in response to a text message telling Cantrell, quote, it's a felony to have your lover paid to work and have his travel paid for by the city. The Nashville mayor had to pay back like $50,000 and serve 3 years probation. She is done. Please don't let this be your path, Latoya. And that's why he was searching for Nashville affair. On or about April 5th of 2022, in response to an associate's text message that spending public funds and using public resources for your personal relationship were illegal, imagine that, Cantrell falsely stated that a relationship with Vappie was not about a personal relationship, it was a work relationship, and challenged her associate to, quote, prove to me that I am having a relationship. On or about April 9th of 2022, Vappie, Cantrell, and one of Cantrell's trusted staff members visited California wineries and appeared in a picture that a trusted staff member posted on a social media platform. Shortly thereafter, an associate of Cantrell's contacted Cantrell's trusted staff member, expressing concern that Vappie was in the picture and asked that it be removed. Cantrell then instructed the associate to not contact my staff. On or about April 10th of 2022, Vappie reported the time he claimed to have worked between March 27th of 2022 and April 9th of 2022. Specifically, he reported that he worked on duty as a member of the EPU from 8 to 8 that day and on March 29th, 2022, despite spending hours inside of that apartment with Cantrell engaging in personal activities and attending a Board of Commissioners meeting during that period. Vappie also reported that he worked the following hours during the San Francisco trip, and he actually put from April 6th to April 9th that he worked 15 hours a day and billed the city for that. On or about April 13th of 2022, Vappie submitted a travel expense form which Cantrell later approved for $2,399 in expenses related to that trip. On August 5th of 2022, Cantrell and Vappie manipulated their schedules to allow them to spend additional time together at the apartment while Vappie claimed to be on duty, including by having Vappie text his EPU partner on August 4th the following, quote, hey, and it redacted the name of the partner, but it says, message from your boss, meet us at City Hall for 10 a.m. instead of 6:30 a.m. On or about August 17th of 2022, Cantrell and Vappie exchanged the following message via WhatsApp. Cantrell, so I will have to go to D.C. on Monday. Vappie, I know. Cantrell, I want to leave on Sunday. Then she writes, will you be going? Vappie, absolutely, if it's possible. Vappie, and it redacts the name of the subordinate in the mayor's office, didn't, or rather hasn't, said anything. Cantrell, okay. Cantrell, I'll make it happen if you say it's okay. Vappie, it's definitely okay. Cantrell, okay. Cantrell then sends a smiley face emoji. Cantrell, I want to leave Sunday and back on Tuesday. Vappie, okay. Cantrell redacts the name of the subordinate in mayor's office, has info. Vappie, good, got it. We need this. Cantrell, boy, do we need this. On or about August 23rd of 2022, Vappie sent Cantrell a message via WhatsApp in which Vappie, among other things, described the Washington, D.C. trip as, quote, another great trip and also another leg on our journey, and told Cantrell that he loved her and their physical relationship. On or about August 23rd of 2022, Vappie and Cantrell arranged for Vappie to replace another EPU member on an upcoming trip Cantrell was scheduled to take to Buenos Aires, Argentina, in which Vappie later described as, quote, a nice one. On or about August 24th of 2022, Vappie submitted a travel expense form which Cantrell later approved for $1,315.90 and expenses related to the August trip to Washington, D.C. On or about September 15th of 2022, while Vappie was in Martha's Vineyard for a Hano trip, which is at Housing Authority, Cantrell and Vappie exchanged the following messages via WhatsApp. Vappie, quote, hey baby, I'm going to go to lunch with the guys and come be with you at the end of today's conference. Vappie then texts, I'm not going on a bus tour. Cantrell said, okay. Then Cantrell said, good. Then Cantrell said, so that is about 3:30 you will be done? And Vappie said, meaning we will get out earlier. Cantrell, let me know about where for lunch to make sure I'm out of sight. And that proves she knew what she was doing was wrong. On or about September 23rd of 2022, Cantrell and Vappie discussed a public records request seeking information about Cantrell's schedule and whether a particular local investigative reporter, member of News Media One, was, quote, on to us. On or about September 25th of 2022, Cantrell sent Vappie a message via WhatsApp that stated, quote, the times when we are truly alone traveling is what spoils me the most, unquote. On or about September 29th of 2022, during a period when Vappie purported to be on duty in the Los Angeles area, providing protection for Cantrell as a member of EPU, Vappie purchased multiple alcoholic beverages and charged the expenses to Cantrell's room. And it actually shows both receipts, and it totals almost a couple $100 in drinks. On or about October 3rd of 2022, Cantrell and Vappie discussed via WhatsApp they need to be careful and to be straight and together. On October 4th of 2022, Cantrell and Vappie discussed via WhatsApp having someone perform a, quote, sweep of the apartment for search of recording devices. On or about October 9th of 2022, Vappie reported that he worked the following hours as a member of EPU during a trip to Atlanta and then to LA between on or about September 28th of 2022 and September 30th of 2022 for the purpose of Cantrell attending conferences. And he reported an 18-hour day, a 16-hour day, and a 16-hour day during that trip. On or about October 24th of 2022, Vappie submitted a travel expense form, which Cantrell approved for $2,621 and some change in expenses related to that Atlanta and LA trip. On or about November 12th of 2022, after a public news report speculated about the existence of an intimate relationship between Vappie and Cantrell, Vappie conducted online searches regarding WhatsApp and its level of security. He's getting a little paranoid, right? On or about December 26th of 2022, Cantrell activated the, quote, disappearing messages feature for her WhatsApp communication thread with Vappie on her personal cell device, which caused all new WhatsApp messages between Cantrell and Vappie to disappear after approximately 24 hours. In or around October of 2022 and January of 2023, Cantrell manually deleted thousands of WhatsApp messages she exchanged with Vappie. She getting real paranoid now. On or about March 19th of 2023, after a local news media outlet broadcast additional reports about Vappie's work on EPU and his relationship with Cantrell, Vappie conducted multiple online searches concerning a member of the news media who reported about Vappie, including where does, and he puts the member of the news media, live. And that's fucking scary. That's some bullshit right there. Basically, this person is reporting this bullshit going on about you. You're going to basically Google their address. What were you going to do there, Vappie? In or around June of 2023, Cantrell directed the interim superintendent to reassign Vappie to EPU, and the interim superintendent complied. On or about July 14th of 2023, Vappie spoke with several agents in the FBI at his residence in New Orleans for over an hour, which he gave numerous false statements regarding, among other things, the nature of his relationship with Cantrell. On or about July 15th of 2023, the day after speaking with special agents with the FBI, Vappie visited the About Disappearing Messages webpage within the WhatsApp website help center. On or about October 25th of 2023, in response to the July 18th subpoena, Cantrell produced a selection of records, which did not include numerous records still in her possession, and an affidavit signed under oath that contained multiple false representations. On or about May 9th of 2024, Cantrell abused her position to obtain non-public information and then file a police report about a New Orleans resident who took and disseminated photographs of Cantrell and Vappie together in public, and that is the person that I talked to once again. On or about May 10th of 2024, Cantrell used the non-public information she obtained to seek and obtain a restraining order against that resident. On or about June 28th of 2024, Cantrell appeared under oath before a federal grand jury in the Eastern District of Louisiana. She affirmed she had reviewed and signed the affidavit. Cantrell also testified falsely that, to the best of her knowledge, she had produced all documents responsive to the subpoena that were in her possession and that none had been withheld from production. And that is basically the entire thing outside of them going over the individual counts. I'm not going to cover all of those with you. I can tell you that there are a total of 18 counts. And they brought the freaking receipts. Let's just say that. Now, a couple of things that they also included in this packet is, it was interesting, they have on or about March 30th of 2022, Vappie conducted an online search for, get ready for this, what was Whitney Houston's character's name in The Bodyguard, which, if you've ever seen The Bodyguard, it's a love story between Whitney Houston's character and Kevin Costner's character. On or about June 11th, Cantrell sent Vappie the following images, and there were images of her wearing what appears to be a wedding ring in those pictures, or an engagement ring of some sort. And they include some other pictures that just solidify what this whole lawsuit is about. Now, to wrap this up, you may say, oh, this is a love story. Not really. The problem here, and the reason for these 18 counts, isn't that these two people, quote unquote, fell in love. It's that the taxpayers in New Orleans were paying for it. $70,000 to Vappie in travel expenses and all this other bullshit time that he put in for a relationship where he was allegedly screwing the mayor of New Orleans this whole time. So they're going to pay for that. And look, New Orleans has had its problems. I've never been a fan of Mayor Latoya Cantrell personally, so I'm not surprised about this. New Orleans has always had its issues with corruption. The former mayor of New Orleans actually did prison time before Mayor Cantrell, so I'm glad to see the federal government trying to clean it up. Look, that's too beautiful of a city, and the people there are just too good of people to be taken advantage of like this. I hope New Orleans wakes up to bad politicians like it appears Mayor Latoya Cantrell is. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back soon. Check out Crime Wire Weekly. Kelly Jennings and myself, we cover the crime news headlines from all over the country and even a few from around the world. You can get that. It's on its own channel, Crime Wire Weekly. Just search it wherever you're listening. And I also linked it in the description of this podcast. We do play snippets on our regular feeds. You'll hear a preview, if you will, on this feed, Exposed. But for the full episode, there's probably about 7 or 8 more crime-related headlines that we cover that you don't hear on this feed. But you got to get a Crime Wire Weekly and just subscribe wherever you're listening. It's completely free. And you'll get your crime news fix for the week. Until next time, for Exposed, Scandalous, Files of the Elite, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.